We're a little bit more progressive with the resources we provide to our students, regardless of where you come from. Now, this application is the responsibility of the student, but you will need information from your parents, depending on what your situation is, either one parent or both parents. And like I mentioned, the application is expected to drop here at the end of December, early January. So we do have a little bit of time before this application drops. Now, what last year's application looked like is this right here. One thing to take note of on this slide is the website is going to remain the same, studentaid.gov. It's a government website, so we want to make sure we're at .gov. I've heard stories of students being on similar websites, maybe a .com website or a .org website, and then it's asking you for credit card information to complete the FAFSA. So one thing to keep in mind is this is a free application for federal student aid, so you should never have to pay any money to submit the application. So this is what the current application looks like. Again, they're in the process of updating it, so it might look a little different when it finally drops. And then the CADA, or the DREAM Act, this is kind of what the DREAM Act looks like. So again, very similar application in terms of the kind of information they're asking for. But this application allows you to apply for state aid from the state of California, as opposed to state and federal aid. Now here's, when I'm doing this presentation in the classroom and I have students pull out a piece of paper and something to write on, the first thing I tell them to write down is step one. And step one is going to be to create the FSA ID. Okay, so all students completing the FAFSA will have an FSA ID. This is going to be essentially your username and password, but also your electronic signature. So you will need one and your parents will need one as well. Now, there's some question on this new application as to whether what they call them now is contributors. So contributors to your application can be mom and dad, or just mom or just dad. So right now there's some question as to if both parents will need an FSA ID or still just one. But whoever's contributing to your application, they do have to provide consent to have their information transferred from the IRS. So we do know whoever's contributing to your application, they'll need to provide consent. We're not sure if both parents or just one parent will need an FSA ID quite yet, but we know for sure that the student needs an FSA ID. And so again, the information you'll need for that is going to be your social. So if you don't know your social by heart, now is a good time to try to memorize that number, because you're going to need that for your college applications. You're also going to need that for your financial aid applications. And that's essentially how they connect you with who you are and your identity. So you'll need your social. You'll need a personal email, you'll need your date of birth, you'll need your phone number, and they're gonna have you plug all that information in, and that's gonna be how you create that FSA ID. So that's something that you guys can take care of right now in preparation for this application in December, is get that FSA ID created. That way, once the application drops, you'll be ready to log right in. And then again, this serves as an electronic signature, so this is how you sign the application at the very end of it. Now, in terms of the formula, right, if you're wondering, how do they determine how much money you're going to be eligible for? Here's what the formula looks like. So the two things that the government wants to know is, in terms of your college plans, what college do you plan on attending? Because they want to know your cost of attendance, right? We're going to pull up a slide here in a second that goes over the different estimated cost of attendance for different types of schools. So they want to know your cost of attendance, and then they want to know what your financial situation is, right? So that information, your financial situation, is based on the family income. So again, if you live at home with both parents and or both parents are married, then they're going to want both parents' financial information. If you just live with one parent, then they're going to just want that one parent's information. And that's going to determine your financial situation. So for the formula here, this cost of attendance minus the SAI, which is short for your student aid index. Your cost of attendance, for example, let's say at Sac State or CSU, we're looking at maybe $28,000 for cost of attendance. And that sounds like a real big number, but we'll break down exactly what goes into cost of attendance and how to reduce that number. But let's say we got $28,000 for your cost of attendance, minus maybe a student aid index of $5,000, right? So based on family income and how many people that income is supporting, the government will say, okay, your family should be able to contribute on an annual basis $5,000 to your college education. So we'll go 28,000 minus 5,000, and that leaves you with a financial need of $23,000, right? Now, the key with understanding that financial need is basically how much of that financial need is being covered by grant money and how much of that financial need is being covered by loan money, right? So if your family income is on the higher end, then chances are you might have to take out some loans, and a large portion of that $23,000 is being covered through loans. If you're in a lower family income category, then chances are a lot of that money is going to be covered through grants. And you find that out by being able to check out your award notification, which usually drops in like March, early March, maybe late February, depending on when you submit your application. So that's the key with understanding that financial need. And again, we'll take a look at what an award notification looks like and how to break down how much of it is coming from grants and how much of it is coming from loans. So again, that's the formula. Cost of attendance minus student aid index equals that financial need. Now, again, I mentioned we'd go into a little bit more depth on that cost of attendance because I mentioned that $28,000 number. That's a large number. So you're probably wondering what the heck goes into that big $28,000 number, right? So a portion of that is going to be your tuition and fees, of course. And your tuition and fees, that's kind of what's locked in, right? So if you're going to Sac State or you're going to UC Davis, Sac State, your tuition and fees for the year is maybe $9,000, right? At UC Davis, for example, your tuition fees for the year might be $13,000 or $14,000, around that number. So if we've got tuition and fees being $8,000, and I mentioned cost of attendance is a $28,000 number, you're wondering where that other $20,000 comes from. This is where it is: housing, books, food, transportation, personal expenses, right? So this is a time where I usually try to interact with the students. So maybe we can throw into the chat, when it comes to housing, right? What do you guys think are some ways you can save money on your housing expenses when you get to college? Maybe throw some ideas into the chat and I'll pull up the chat. Let's see if maybe before we do that, we can get into some questions. Have there been some questions in the chat?
Yeah, there's a question. What do you do if you go between houses and have divorced parents?
Okay, so yeah, the rule is which parent is more financially responsible for you, right? So which parent, and they usually use the 51% number. So if you had to choose which parent do you feel like is more responsible for you financially, that's usually the parent that they want you to put the information for in that situation when you have divorced parents. So the good thing about divorced parents is they only want one parent's information, so you don't need both parents' information. But yeah, they'll have you put down whichever parent is more financially responsible for you. Yeah, okay, I know. I see Miss Walters there had that right there. So yeah, that's how that would go. Now, what I would say, I mean, kind of a tip is it's not a bad idea to maybe lean toward the parent whose income is lower, assuming it's really close. Like when you say go back and forth between houses, if you can argue that it's really 50-50 in that situation, I might say, okay, lean toward the parent whose income is lower. But rule of thumb is which parent is more financially responsible for you. Okay. Now, housing. Let's get a little bit of input from you guys. What do you think? Some ways to save money on your housing expenses when you guys get to college? There's two main things that you guys can do. What do you guys think those are? I mean, really, you have three different options. One of them is going to be kind of the more pricey option. Or I guess there's 4 options. 2 of them are going to be kind of pricey, and then 2 of them are going to be what help you save money. Okay, Jackie's got one of them.